The investigation file marked administratively closed represents a specific, haunting failure. Not a failure of dedication, intelligence, or resources, but a fundamental failure of explanation. It is the precise point where tangible facts yield to persistent mystery, where the evidentiary threshold is crossed not by a triumphant entry into truth, but by a weary retreat from the impossible.
These files are monuments to professional exhaustion, narratives sealed by silence, and the recognition that the known universe of cause and effect has somehow been subtly, impossibly bypassed.
This profile dissects 5 such cases, examining the evidential gaps and sensory remnants that forced dedicated professionals, detectives, forensic accountants, metallurgists, and maritime investigators to retreat from the threshold of conclusion. These absences stand not merely as unsolved crimes, but as profound philosophical challenges to the reliability of observable reality. Our narrative opens in the unforgiving, sterile quiet of a suburban home, a dwelling that once housed the Oakley family, now frozen in time and permeated by a silence heavier than mere emptiness. This is the scene of The Vanishing of the Oakley Family, a case file often referenced as the purest definition of an absence of evidence. The house, located in a neighborhood characterized by meticulously maintained lawns and the muffled sounds of distant traffic, was discovered by a neighbor retrieving a mail package. What they found inside was not chaos, but unnerving perfection. The air inside the kitchen was cool, bearing the ghost smell of toasted bread and fresh coffee. Everything bespoke a morning interrupted, instantly and without warning. The core of the mystery lay anchored to 2 specific artifacts. Firstly, the kitchen wall clock, a simple battery-operated model encased in brushed stainless steel. The forensic team later confirmed that the power cell was fully functional. The mechanism had not failed due to decay or mechanical stress, but seemed to have simply halted mid-tick. The second hand resting exactly between the 44th and 45th marker. It was a digital stoppage in an analog mechanism, baffling the engineers who later attempted to replicate the pause. Secondly, on the small oak breakfast table rested a single, half-empty ceramic mug. The porcelain was thick, retaining residual warmth when investigators first touched it, a forensic marker suggesting the inhabitant had been present mere minutes before the neighbor's call. Long after the 6:45 a.m. clock stoppage, beside the mug lay the morning edition of the local newspaper, folded neatly to the local news section. The masthead crisp and unmarred. There was no crease suggesting it had been held, nor any splash of coffee to indicate a hurried movement. It was pristine, waiting to be read. The comprehensive search that followed yielded only further frustration. 3 individuals, a husband, a wife, and their teenage daughter, had simply dissolved. The beds were unmade, suggesting they had risen. The garage was locked, and both family vehicles were still parked inside, dust settling lightly on their windshields. The doors and windows of the home showed no signs of forced entry, no scratches on the locks, no shattered glass. The alarm system, a standard monitored unit, registered 0 breach alerts, functioning perfectly according to its nightly diagnostic report. The investigators meticulously dusted every conceivable surface for foreign fingerprints, for signs of struggle, for traces of struggle chemicals like adrenaline residue, or even minute cellular debris. They found only the routine, familiar prints of the Oakleys themselves. It was as if a perfectly sealed container had been emptied from the inside, leaving no trace of the emptying mechanism. The only irregularity was the complete lack of external transference. If they had walked out the door, even willingly, they would have carried trace amounts of dirt, pollen, or carpet fiber onto the porch. Nothing. The threshold was sterile. After 6 months of continuous surveillance and investigative dead ends, Detective Hayes, the lead investigator, stated in his final report. The premises presented a tableau of life paused, not ended. Every physical indication suggests they existed within the home, engaged in routine, then ceased to be present. The file is administratively closed because the evidence offers nothing to pursue. We are left with the silence of the setting. The quiet suburb kept its secret, a perfect, unnerving vacuum where a family used to be.
Transitioning sharply from the domestic interior to the arid expanse of the southwestern desert, we examine the site of the Rattlesnake Ridge incident.
This case replaces the mystery of absence with the confusion of impossible presence. The location was a remote, infrequently traversed section of government land, hundreds of miles of sun-bleached, cracked earth and low-lying sagebrush. The incident began with a seismic anomaly detected by a specialized geological survey team charting subterranean stress fractures. The anomaly was not an earthquake, but a deep, focused shockwave, indicating a massive, localized impact, followed by an immediate, intense thermal signature that momentarily spiked temperatures high above natural averages. When the recovery team arrived 3 days later, navigating the treacherous, unmarked terrain, they found the core impact zone, a deep, smoothly concave depression pressed into the desert floor. The sand surrounding the depression was vitrified, turned into smooth, dark glass by unimaginable heat, but only within a tightly defined geometrical boundary. Beyond this boundary, the fragile desert ecosystem, the dry grasses, the scorpions, the sun-baked soil, was entirely undisturbed. Forensic teams, sweltering in the crushing, dry heat, began the painstaking process of sifting the impact crater. The smell of ozone and something sharply metallic lingered faintly in the air, a scent that persisted despite the constant wind whipping across the ridge. What they recovered defied classification by every known metallurgical database on Earth. These were shards of material, irregular in shape, but uniform in composition. The fragments were incredibly dense, weighing 3 times that of lead for their size, yet they possessed a crystalline structure that made them brittle. Their color was an iridescent gray, occasionally catching the harsh desert light with a subtle shimmering blue. The most baffling characteristic was their inherent energy signature. Even days after the incident, if brought into a pitch-black environment, the fragments would be discovered glowing faintly, emitting a soft, cool blue luminescence that diminished over time but never fully extinguished. This was not phosphorescence. Spectral analysis determined the glow was a result of non-standard isotopic decay that did not fit the profile of any terrestrial element or known man-made radioactive material. Dr. Eleanor Vance, the lead material scientist assigned to the project, described the material in her confidential briefing. It is heat-resistant to temperatures that would liquefy tungsten, yet it was found broken. It is impossibly dense, yet its lattice structure is non-metallic. We cannot melt it, we cannot chemically dissolve it, and we cannot reliably date it. Our strongest conclusion is that it is structurally flawless, designed for immense pressure and thermal fluctuation, and yet we recovered fragments. Something cataclysmic happened to an object made of this material. The fragments were transported to a secure underground laboratory for exhaustive analysis. Mass spectrometers struggled to identify the core components, yielding baffling results that suggested elements existing in a higher state of stability than typically observed. Stress tests failed to leave a mark. Diamond-tipped drills shattered upon contact. Yet, the material had clearly separated during the incident. The investigation became a closed loop. If the fragments were the remnants of a terrestrial device, its manufacturing process utilized physics unknown to current engineering. If they were non-terrestrial, the question of their origin and the nature of their impact remained entirely unanswered. There was no flight path determined, no trajectory calculated, and no corresponding atmospheric event logged by civilian or military radar. Just the silent, glowing fragments resting in sterile, climate-controlled environments, a constant, tangible reminder that the reality encounter at Rattlesnake Ridge lay outside the scope of factual, human explanation. The administrative closing cited evidence present, source unaccounted for, a rare and deeply unsettling conclusion. The focus then shifts from the quiet violence of the desert to the cold verticality of the metropolitan towers, detailing the Ghost Ledger affair. Here, the mystery involves not physical absence or impossible material, but the sophisticated surgical removal of intangible assets, money, hundreds of millions of units evaporated from secure digital vaults. The setting is the financial heart of the city, specifically the sub-level data center of a massive global clearinghouse. This environment is characterized by the constant low-pitched roar of industrial cooling units, the sharp smell of processed air, and the mesmerizing, repetitive blink of thousands of server indicator lights. It is a world sealed off by concrete and hardened steel, designed to be impervious to physical intrusion and digital compromise. The theft was discovered during a routine end-of-quarter internal reconciliation audit. The funds did not disappear through a slow leak or a clumsy hack. They were removed instantly across 18 separate secure accounts in a single, perfectly coordinated transaction batch. The total amount vanished from the bank's primary ledger, only to reappear within microseconds in a series of deep web wallets protected by layers of proprietary, uncrackable encryption. The ensuing investigation, conducted by a specialized unit of cyber forensic auditors and federal agents, immediately zeroed in on the intrusion vector. They expected malware, a Trojan horse, or an insider exploit. Instead, they found a pristine system. The firewall logs, the access histories, and the internal audit trails were all flawless. No unauthorized IP address had ever logged in. No anomalous process had spiked CPU usage. The physical security around the server stacks was untouched. It was as if the thief had passed through the layers of protection, authentication, encryption, and physical isolation without ever triggering a single warning sensor. The auditors termed the method the zero-trace exploit. The perpetrator had not stolen the key to the vault. They had redefined the lock itself at the quantum level of the banking network. The investigators found only an echoing humidity in the deserted, climate-controlled server rooms and a blizzard of encrypted data that offered no purchase. Lead forensic accountant Marcus Chen described the forensic analysis as attempting to trace smoke through glass. We saw the money leave, we know where it went conceptually, but we can't see how it departed. There is no transactional fingerprint. Imagine a digital ledger, a long sheet of numbers. In one column, the money exists. In the next, it is gone. The space between the two columns is empty. No record of the instruction that caused the transfer. The code itself, the execution file, was perfectly self-destructing, leaving nothing but an impossible subtraction. The investigation lasted 2 years, involving the reconstruction of trillions of data packets, searching for the ghost of an instruction set. They learned that the thief operated with an intellectual elegance that defied existing defense mechanisms. It was suspected that the perpetrator had exploited a fundamental, deep-seated mathematical vulnerability in the core proprietary encryption algorithm used by the bank. A vulnerability so obscure and complex that only a select handful of cryptographers worldwide would even comprehend its existence. The only physical residue was the faint, sterile smell of ozone perpetually pumped by the cooling systems, a reminder of the immense processing power utilized, both by the system and the mind that defeated it. The case was ultimately closed, not due to lack of effort, but due to lack of a crime to prosecute. The system said, officially,
that the money had moved according to protocol.
The evidence of theft lay only in the gaping holes in the balance sheets, a mathematical ghost haunting the high-security digital vaults. The final finding was simply flawless digital removal by unknown agency, a haunting testament to the power of unseen, untouchable intellectual prowess. Moving to the volatile maritime environment, we confront the Neptune's Kiss disappearance, centered on a small, salt-crusted research vessel named the RV Aetheria. This case is marked by the strange duality of extreme proximity to disaster without the disaster itself.
The Aetheria, a vessel commissioned for deep-sea acoustic mapping, was discovered listing gently in a remote, isolated bay off the coast of the North Atlantic.
The bay was known for its sudden, dramatic fog banks and unsettling deep water topography. A patrol cutter investigating the lack of check-in located the vessel bobbing silently amidst a thick, oily slick of calm water. When the boarding team crossed the threshold onto the deck, they were met by a potent mixture of sea salt, diesel fuel, and the metallic tang of machinery. Everything aboard was wet, yet organized. The crew of 4, 2 marine biologists, a helmsman, and a technical engineer, had vanished. The maritime investigation confirmed that the ship's engine was idling, though the propulsion was disengaged. The navigation equipment, including the GPS and the complex sonar mapping array, was intact and fully operational. The ship's main radio was functional, powered on, and set to the standard distress frequency. This lack of emergency preparation confounded the investigators. If an immediate crisis had struck, standard procedure dictates engaging the radio, cutting the engines, or deploying survival gear. None of these actions had occurred. The galley contained half-eaten meals, a pot of stew simmering on a low heat, cooling plates set out for dinner. Wet weather gear hung neatly from hooks near the main cabin door, suggesting the crew had been inside, comfortable, and preparing for a routine evening. The only sign of disruption was a slight scuff mark on the floor near the navigation table, as if someone had abruptly pushed back their chair.
Penyelidik bersarung tangan itu dengan hati-hati mengangkat buku log yang tebal dan basah, bukti penting yang tersisa dari pelayaran yang hilang.
The logbook was a thick, ledger-style volume, its pages damp from the pervasive ocean humidity.
The final entry, written in the steady hand of the helmsman just minutes before the crew's estimated time of disappearance, was a routine notation of coordinates and weather conditions. However, below the final legible line of text, the page contained a hastily drawn glyph. It was scrawled deeply into the page with a graphite pencil, the pressure so intense that the tip had nearly torn the paper. The symbol was not a letter, nor a number, nor a known maritime signal. It consisted of a central spiral, tightly wound, flanked by 2 irregular horizontal lines that ended in sharp, angled points, suggesting extreme haste or immediate, profound distress. The meaning was 0. It communicated only overwhelming, instantaneous urgency.
Di bawah langit kelabu Atlantik Utara yang bergelora, kapal ini dengan gigih menurunkan sonar untuk misi pencarian yang melelahkan di laut dalam.
No life jackets were found, no personal flotation devices, and most disturbingly, no bodies. The depth of the water in the bay was immense, the seabed a treacherous, cold expanse of mud and rock. But even allowing for deep currents, the complete lack of debris or biological evidence defied maritime probability. The Maritime Board's conclusion summarized the situation. The vessel experienced no mechanical failure, suffered no external damage, and made no attempt to signal distress, despite fully operational communications equipment. The crew's departure was simultaneous, unplanned, and perfectly clean. We are forced to conclude that they left the sphere of their known reality and vanished into the blue horizon, taking only the urgency of that final, meaningless symbol with them. The file was closed citing disappearance at sea,
unexplained circumstance. The haunting glyph copied onto the final administrative page as the only remaining trace.
Finally, we analyze the Museum of Unseen Hands, detailing the surgical removal of the Star of the Zenith diamond exhibit.
This case combines the impossible perfection of the digital theft with the chilling physical vacuum of the Oakley disappearance. The crime occurred in the Central Hall of the Metropolitan Museum, a building of hushed reverence, where the air is climate-controlled and the only sound is the echoing footfall on polished marble floors.
The Star of the Zenith, a flawless 150-carat blue diamond, was the centerpiece of the permanent collection.
It rested on a rotating pedestal, encased within a cube of bulletproof laminated glass, protected by a state-of-the-art multi-layered security system.
The discovery was made by the morning security shift.
The display case was locked, intact, and brilliantly illuminated.
But the pedestal was empty.
The initial response was one of immediate, overwhelming professional panic.
Security protocols dictate a forced breach must occur to access the diamond.
The investigators meticulously examined the enclosure.
The thick, laminated glass showed no scratches, no stress fractures, and no signs of thermal or sonic breaching.
The locks, triple redundant electromagnetic units, were sealed and confirmed to be engaged.
The security system log was the most compelling piece of negative evidence.
The diamond was protected by 3 distinct layers.
1. Pressure sensors. Fine sensors embedded in the pedestal registered zero fluctuation in weight, i.e., the weight of the diamond was simply not there anymore.
2. Infrared matrix. A delicate, invisible lattice of laser beams crisscrossed the display space, designed to detect any interruption.
The log recorded no beam breaks, meaning no object, however thin, had passed through the detection field.
3. Volumetric motion detectors. High-frequency ultrasonic sensors covered the internal and external volume of the display. They registered zero movement, confirming no hands, tools, or gases had physically occupied the space.
The head of museum security, a seasoned professional with 30 years of counterintelligence training, was visibly shaken.
It is mathematically impossible for the diamond to be gone, he asserted repeatedly to the investigating police unit.
The logs proved that nothing, absolutely nothing, has entered or exited this box since the alarm was set.
Yet the exhibit was gone.
The only physical anomaly in the perfect vacuum of the crime scene was a subtle, persistent scent noted by the first responding officer. A faint, sharp odor, reminiscent of ozone, the smell produced by high-voltage electrical discharge or intense ionization. This smell lingered inside the velvet-lined display case, cementing the perfect, untraceable withdrawal. The velvet lining itself, a material highly sensitive to touch and dust, was undisturbed, its nap completely smooth.
The technical analysis shifted from finding the breach to understanding what kind of force could operate outside the parameters of physics detection.
They hypothesized, without proof, methods involving localized electromagnetic distortion, molecular phasing, or an instantaneous teleportation.
Concepts pulled from theoretical physics, not criminal methodology.
The final report concluded that the theft was executed not by defeating the security system, but by performing a physical act that the security system was not equipped to detect.
An act which left behind only an electrical residue.
The lack of any traceable tool marks, any alarm trip, or any forced entry meant the investigation had nowhere to go. There was no physical evidence of a perpetrator's presence, only the absence of the priceless object itself.
The case was administratively closed, catalogued as perfect withdrawal, unquantifiable means. A testament to the chilling realization that some acts of professional criminality transcend the capacity of standard investigative reality. These 5 absences, the quiet suburban vacuum, the glowing desert fragment, the ghost in the ledger, the salt-crusted maritime glyph, and the sterile ozone of the museum stand as monuments to professional frustration. Each case represents the deep, unsettling recognition that human ingenuity, or perhaps something profoundly external to human understanding,
has rendered the search for definitive conclusion obsolete.
The term administratively closed is not synonymous with solved or forgotten. It is the formal documentation of investigative defeat. It signifies the moment when the physical evidence runs out, the logical pathways collapse, and the human mind, dedicated to imposing order on chaos, is forced to accept that the boundaries of factual inquiry have been reached. These files are sealed by silence, but they echo with the enduring question of what happens when reality itself refuses to provide a conclusion. They remain open wounds in the factual history of the impossible, waiting for a key that may never be forged.